There comes a moment in life when you realize that you are not like others, that there is something about you that the world simply cannot understand. Perhaps it is the way you see things, as if you had a different filter in your eyes, capturing nuances that go unnoticed by everyone else. Or maybe it's that deep need to be alone, not out of fear or shyness, but because it's only in the silence of your own company that you can truly breathe. And so you walk through the streets, through the corridors, through the spaces of life, carrying this strange loneliness that is not empty, but full of meanings that no one else seems to be able to decipher. It's as if you speak a secret language that only you know, and the whole world insists on not wanting to learn. Franz Kafka knew this feeling well, this invisible mark that some carry, this difference that is not a defect, but a unique way of existing that the world refuses to accept or even try to understand. If you've made it this far, you probably recognize that feeling of being different, of carrying something that others can't see or accept. This channel is a safe space for people like you, who feel more deeply, who see beyond the surface, who need moments of solitude not to escape the world, but to reconnect with your own essence. By subscribing, you not only follow profound reflections on human existence, but also join a community of people who understand that being different is not a burden, but a rare gift. And if this content resonates with something inside you, leave a like, because every gesture of support not only strengthens this work, but also creates a bridge of connection with other souls who, like you, seek understanding in a world that often prefers superficiality over depth. The loneliness of those who walk alone is not the absence of company, but the presence of a different consciousness, a way of perceiving the world that transcends conventional patterns of socialization. It is as if these people were born with a kind of extra antenna, picking up frequencies that most cannot tune into. They feel the weight of empty conversations, the artificiality of forced smiles, the superficiality of relationships based on appearances. That is why they choose silence not as an escape, but as a refuge for a sensitivity that the modern world seems to constantly want to attack or ignore. Kafka described this experience as that of a stranger in his own land, someone who speaks the same language as everyone else, but whose words carry meanings that no one else can understand. It is the loneliness of the misunderstood, but also the freedom of those who do not need to mold themselves to the expectations of others in order to exist. This solitary journey reveals character traits that contemporary society finds difficult to process. The ability to be comfortable with oneself, for example, is viewed with suspicion in a world that confuses solitude with pathological loneliness, assuming that anyone who is not constantly surrounded by people must be suffering from some social or emotional problem. But there is a huge difference between loneliness imposed by rejection and loneliness chosen as a way to preserve one's integrity. Those who walk alone by choice have developed an intimate relationship with themselves, knowing their deepest thoughts, contradictions, fears and strengths in a way that those who always live in the company of others rarely achieve. It is an intimacy with oneself that frightens those who have never experienced this kind of inner encounter, because it requires courage to face truths that the constant company of others allows one to avoid. The modern world has created a kind of allergy to deep introspection, preferring constant distraction to genuine self-reflection. Social media, incessant commitments, and the constant noise of urban life seem to conspire against moments of true inner silence. In this context, those who seek and value solitude appear as anomalies, as people who have not adequately adapted to the frenetic rhythms of modernity. But perhaps it is precisely these people who keep alive an essential dimension of the human experience that is gradually being lost. They are like librarians of an ancient wisdom about the value of silence, contemplation, and the ability to be present with oneself without the constant need for external validation. Kafka understood that this difference is not a conscious choice, but a profound configuration of being that manifests itself very early in life. It is as if some people are born with a different type of nervous system, more sensitive to emotional nuances, more permeable to the energies around them, more aware of the contradictions and absurdities that permeate social existence. These people often feel like actors forced to play a role that does not come naturally to them, as if they were constantly translating their thoughts and feelings into a language that others can accept, but which inevitably loses something essential in translation. Have you ever felt that strange sensation of being a stranger in your own world, of carrying perceptions and sensitivities that seem to have no place in everyday conversations? Have you ever experienced that moment when, in the middle of a crowd, you feel completely alone, not because of a lack of company, but because no one around you seems to speak the same emotional language as you? If you are experiencing this right now, leave a comment. I am also different, and that's okay. Your courage in sharing this truth may be exactly what someone else needs to read today, to feel less alone in their own difference, to understand that being misunderstood by the world does not mean being wrong, but only means being authentic in a world that often privileges conformity over inner truth. The transformation that these people undergo throughout their lives is similar to that described by Kafka in his most profound narratives. It is a gradual process of accepting one's own nature, of understanding that difference is not a defect to be corrected, but a characteristic to be embraced and cultivated. In the beginning, there is often a desperate attempt to fit in, to force connections that do not flow naturally, to participate in social dynamics that drain energy rather than nourish the spirit. But over time, one learns to discern between loneliness that hurts and loneliness that heals, between isolation that impoverishes and seclusion that enriches the soul. This process of acceptance is neither linear nor easy. There are moments of deep doubt, when a person questions whether there really is anything of value in their difference, or whether it would be simpler to simply conform to expected standards. Kafka experienced this tension intensely, oscillating between periods of extraordinary creativity fueled by his unique sensitivity and moments of deep despair over the incomprehension he felt around him. He knew that his way of seeing the world was both his greatest strength and his greatest source of suffering, because it allowed him to create profound and universal works of art, but also isolated him from conventional forms of happiness and social belonging. Society has a natural tendency to try to normalize what it does not understand, to offer quick fixes for what it considers problems. For those who are naturally solitary, strategies are often offered to become more sociable, more outgoing, more suited to the standards of interaction that most consider healthy. But these attempts at normalization completely ignore the possibility that some people simply function differently, that they have distinct emotional and energetic needs, that they find nourishment and growth in experiences that may seem limiting or even pathological to others. The truth is that the world needs those who walk alone, those who keep alive the capacity for deep reflection, for questioning structures accepted without criticism, for preserving a sensitivity that modern life tends to dull. It is these people who often become artists, philosophers, writers, thinkers, who can offer unique perspectives on the human condition. Their difference is not a manufacturing defect, but an evolutionary specialization, a particular form of consciousness that contributes to the diversity and richness of the collective human experience. Kafka understood that carrying this difference requires a kind of quiet courage, the courage to exist authentically, even when it means not being completely understood by others. It is the courage to preserve a particular form of sensitivity in a world that often rewards insensitivity, to keep alive a capacity for contemplation in a culture obsessed with constant action, to value depth in a society that often privileges shiny surfaces over real substance. Over time, this type of person develops a very particular relationship with their own solitude. It ceases to be seen as a deficiency and becomes a sacred space, an inner territory where the person can be completely themselves without the need to translate their thoughts and feelings to an audience that may not be prepared to understand them. It is in solitude that these people find the energy and clarity necessary to navigate the complexities of social life when necessary, like a diver who needs to return to the surface to breathe before exploring the depths again. Walking alone also develops a particular form of compassion, different from that which arises from constant socialization. It is a compassion that comes from a deep recognition of the fundamental loneliness that all human beings experience, even those who are constantly surrounded by people. Those who have learned to be comfortable alone recognize that ultimately we all face our fears, our doubts, and our moments of transformation in essential solitude, and this understanding generates a deep and silent empathy for all those who also struggle with their own inner battles. Kafka realized that this heightened sensitivity allows one to grasp aspects of reality that go unnoticed by most people. It is as if these people live with the pores of their souls more open, absorbing emotional nuances, social contradictions, subtle beauties, and hidden sufferings that others cannot perceive. This expanded capacity for perception is both a gift and a burden, because it offers access to deeper layers of experience, but also makes the person more vulnerable to the pains and absurdities of the world. The process of maturing for those who walk alone involves learning to balance this sensitivity, to create healthy filters that allow them to preserve their capacity for deep perception without being completely overwhelmed by the intensity of their experiences. It is a delicate learning process that requires time and patience with oneself, because there are no manuals or external guides that teach how to navigate a sensitivity that most people do not possess or understand. Over time, these individuals often discover that their apparent difference is actually a more authentic form of connection with universal aspects of the human experience. Their ability to be alone without feeling abandoned gives them access to a dimension of existence that transcends immediate social needs and touches on fundamental questions about the meaning of life, the nature of consciousness, and the purpose of individual existence in the larger context of reality. Chosen solitude thus becomes not an escape from the world, but a different way of participating in it. It is as if these people offer a silent service to humanity, keeping alive the capacity for deep reflection, genuine questioning, and the preservation of values and perceptions that the speed of modern life tends to trample or ignore. They are like sentinels of human interiority, guarding essential aspects of experience that could be lost in the collective rush for productivity, external success, and social approval. Kafka understood that accepting this different nature does not mean resigning oneself to perpetual isolation, but rather learning to consciously choose when and how to connect with others in a way that honors both one's own authenticity and the possibility of genuine relationships. It is learning to communicate one's difference not as a barrier, but as a unique perspective that can enrich interactions when one encounters people willing to understand and value this particularity. The final transformation in this process is the understanding that difference does not need to be justified or explained to be valid. Some people are simply like that. They carry this particular mark of sensitivity and introspection, and that is enough. It is not necessary to convince the world that this way of existing has value, because value does not depend on external recognition, but on the authenticity with which one lives one's own nature. The world may continue to not fully understand those who walk alone, but these individuals will continue to exist and contribute in their own unique way to the richness of human experience. They are living reminders that there are many ways to be human, many ways to find meaning and purpose, many paths to personal fulfillment that do not necessarily require collective approval or social conformity. When consciously embraced, the solitary walk becomes a form of silent resistance against the homogenization of human experience. An affirmation that diversity is expressed not only in visible differences, but also in the profound and subtle ways of perceiving and relating to reality. It is a precious contribution to a world that often forgets that the richness of humanity lies not only in what unites us, but also in what makes us unique and unrepeatably different. And so, those who carry traits that the world refuses to understand continue on their journey, no longer seeking external approval or understanding, but offering the world the gift of their authentic difference, knowing that somewhere other people will recognize in that difference not an inadequacy, but an echo of their own unique experience of being human in a world that is still learning to celebrate all the diversity of consciousness and sensitivity that our species is capable of. Manifesting.